Hello guys, and welcome back to Fan Factory Friday, where we showcase your builds. And I've got to say, this has to be one of my favorite fan factories to date. And from the sheer architecture to the amazing freight ship and underground train station, there is so much to see. So I highly recommend downloading this save from satisfactorytips.com, where if you want to check the save out yourself, you can. Just make sure you have a pretty powerful system, as I had to pull in the owner of the save, Firefless, to host the game for me so that I could actually record. So do bear in mind there are going to be a few bugs that you can see, some glitches. That's because it's in multiplayer. But I will put a link to that in the description. And also, if you do enjoy this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for some more. Just let Firefless know that this save is absolutely incredible. But without further ado, let's stop talking about it, let's get into it. This save was made by Firefless and has been developed over the course of almost 1,400 hours, with the save being a massive 80 megabytes. To give you an idea of that size, most fan factories that we cover are between 8 to 10 megabytes in size. Firefless has hit the object limit, but has actually extended this limit to allow him to build more, and the goal has been to go for the maximum amount of thermal propulsion rockets possible with the resources on the map. Unfortunately, the bauxite for the time being is what's the limiting factor, but if possible, Firefless is going to try and hit 60 thermal propulsion engines per minute. Now, this save is by no means finished, though a lot of it does look very refined. Now, the intention is to do all of the aesthetics when update 5 hits, which is why some of the parts have no walls, and it wouldn't surprise me if Firefless goes back, now having seen what's coming with update 5, and adjusts when necessary the factory that he currently has. I'm also really interested to see what Firefless is going to do with the big rock which is just going to form in the middle of the Dune desert from update 5, as that is where his hub is and also his central storage area. But we'll be getting to that shortly. First, I wanted to show off the various areas of this city mega factory in the Dune desert. Each building has a separate design style. Some are circular, some are more angular. The design also differs inside each factory depending on the style of build, such as this circular computer factory. And this, I should mention, is all done in vanilla. Lighting is also used throughout to accentuate parts of the build, and the factories are mostly all load balanced, with the exception of a few places. I'll talk more about that though shortly. Each section is incredibly well thought out with the resource inputs and outputs. Here we have one of the crystal oscillator factories, which you can see the train lines have been placed through them, which add a nice little variation within the build. And I love the sloped wall design. But it really excites me to think what Firefless may have planned for this in update 5 when it arrives. Inside this factory, we again have 2 layers of manufacturers producing the oscillators, with all the load balancing done on the logistics floor beneath. Now, it may look a little messy, but the sheer amount of effort that goes into creating a load balance floor in a 1 to 2 foundation space deserves the recognition. This is incredible. Now, moving away from this, I want to show off some of the other architecture. The matching of glass with the foundations to create depth on the outer walls. And you can actually see on this exact same building that the roof has been replicated as well, with the half pipe foundation design and the glass foundations. The next section that I want to focus on is the white skyscraper, which produces the turbo motors. Now, we'll be checking it out shortly, but first, beneath this, we have the cooling systems factory for this. This is under the train floor with just the silos popping out above the foundations. Now, I love seeing them just showing and mixing the fluids. And beneath this, we can actually see the effort that's gone into the load balancing of all of these. This, of course, is all below the turbo motor factory, which currently produces 60 turbo motors a minute. And this is super important, and we'll talk about why in a little while. The inside of the factory is pretty spacious, and all of the resources are then sent to the hub. Now this circular star-like building is surrounded by statues, and of course you can afford to buy a lot of statues when you're generating about 28 million points at your peak within this factory per minute. And before buying all of these, he actually had over 4,000 coupons on hand, which is why obviously he could afford them all. Now under the hub is a storage facility, or a personal storage facility we should say, and I love how the hypertube wraps around the pillar. But outside is the cleverest part of the build. Fireflesses run key items such as the cooling systems, the supercomputers, turbo motors and pressure cubes alongside 4 Mark 1 belts. This way, Firefless can know whether he's producing the maximum of 60 per minute. So each of those are being produced at 60 per minute. If there's a break in these conveyor lines, he knows that there's something wrong with the factory and he has to go check them out. This is obviously something that Firefless will be doing with the thermal propulsion rockets as well. And of course, it's not so reliable when we're in multiplayer, but in single player it is very useful. Now we then have the train station, and I've got to say I love the glass walls with the arched roofs and then this circle top build just above it. I should also mention that below this there is a subway section which we'll be talking about at the end. This is just a few of the buildings, but we've got so much to get through. We'll briefly touch on some others and then get on with it and move to the other areas. There are many more incredibly well-designed factories here. Each of them contribute to the turbo motors. And another one of my favorites is actually this cathedral-looking building, which produces all the steel for the build. Again, all of the inputs are sorted on the floors below, but I love the style with the glass foundations. And beneath the building, we have more storage for construction items. We then have the supercomputer factory next to this, and the majority of these resources are being brought in by train. And I love the little tunnel of hadron colliders that the trains need to go through for the nuclear pasta as they come into the factory. A few more, but by no means all of the factories here include the museum, which was an old aluminium factory built in Update 3, which has now been retired. I believe it was in Update 3.5, if I remember correctly. And then we have the gorgeous pure Caterium ingot factory built inside this 4 merged cylinder build. I just love the curves and how the factory kind of blends into one another with all of the resources running on the outside wall. This, of course, is not all the factories, but we are going to move on from the desert over to the swamp now, where the majority of power is being produced, as well as Firefless's nuclear freight ship. Overlooking the swamp is a silicon factory, and across from this, as you go into the swamp, if you have a few minutes, you can see that the freight ship and the nuclear plant just magically kind of appear out of nowhere. The main nuclear power is run by the power plants that are stationed on the coast, which generate a total of 150,000 megawatts of power, with all the nuclear power being recycled and then sent across to the freight ship to be either sunk as plutonium fuel rods or, when necessary, used as further power, which is able to generate a total of 112,500 megawatts. Now, I love the detail that has been put into the ship and its decorations, and of course the command deck is where you can choose to recycle or use the plutonium fuel rods. Really do check this out if you can. The next factory that we will be looking at is the fused frames in the crater lake. Now, this is very much work in progress and will be finished when Update 5 arrives. But I love the use of drones and how the trains run through the factory itself. And one of the best parts of this factory is the nitrogen well just behind this. It feels a bit like a coliseum, and I love the gentle ramps into the packaging plant above it. Of course, a lot of the resources for fused modular frames are being brought in from the factory in the crater and then moved across. From this, we actually have over in the grassland void area the copper powder factory, where you can see all of these dozens of refineries. And from here, we'll actually fly to the other side of the pink forest to check out the new aluminium plant. And this is also work in progress, but I love the clean logistic lines feeding into the factory. This behemoth produces a huge amount of aluminium to be distributed throughout his world. And once you've finished checking out this section, you should definitely head over to the estuary, where he has another section of factories, all producing the pure ingots that are needed for the main factory. This area feels very industrial to me, and I love the style. The trains then take all the resources back to the Dune Desert along this beautiful train line, and don't worry, Firefless has already told me that he will be adding supports to this section. Of course, what is a mega factory if it doesn't have its own fuel plant as well? Here, Firefless produces turbo fuel to be used, and I have to admit I love seeing the generators on the curved pipe foundations with a walkway in between, especially with the turbo factory arching above it. And this factory is truly awesome, and all of it blows my mind. And finally, all resources can be sent by train through the tunnel back to the main factory, or you can travel over the plateau to get some gorgeous shots of the factory. But before we finish, I wanted to show off the subway station that I mentioned earlier, which is located beneath the train station and accessed by Hypertube. It's fully enclosed, which really makes it look like a modern tube station. Overall, this factory has been an absolute blast to check out, and it's highly worth checking out the save yourself, as there's so much that I've missed. I'm also really interested to see what Firefless is going to do for update 5, so if you're interested in what he's going to do, do drop a thumbs up and let me know in the comment section so that we can try and bring him back for the next season. And obviously don't forget to subscribe if you do want to see that. I'm also really interested to see what Firefless is going to do with the Spire Coast update, whether he's going to just move all of those plants across or whether they're going to have to start again. But guys, I have to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's inspired you as much as it has me. But I do have to say special thanks to Firefless for both submitting this and also for letting me join their game while playing so that I could actually record this. And as always, special thanks does also go to our amazing Solar Eclipse patrons, the Calamity and Cerebral Tag, as well as James Irwin, as well as our Lunars, Dixie Chris and Lord of July, and finally our blood moon of the day, which today is Papa Snoozy. Anyway guys, until next time, as always, ciao for now.